Hey friends, welcome to this week's episode of Feminist Fridays, a series where we explore social and political issues in news and media from a feminist and an intersectional perspective. There is a lot to cover this week, and I just want to remind you all, if you want to receive an exclusive cut of this week's episode, go head on over to my Patreon. Patrons who sign up for the $5 tier will receive extended cuts of episodes of Feminist Fridays, where I talk about each issue more in depth and am able to cover additional news stories that I didn't have time to talk about in the regular video. So go do that. Link in the description. The day I'm filming this, March 14th, high schoolers across the country are participating in national walkouts. Students across the United States are protesting gun violence and lack of gun control legislation in honor of the Parkland High School shooting, in which 17 teachers and students were killed by an armed assailant. This is really heartbreaking to me because the last thing that teenagers should have to worry about is whether or not a gunman is going to come into their school and start another school shooting. They should be worrying about who they're going to ask to prom or whether or not they're going to pass Spanish, not burying their friends and teachers. In related news, here's a real gem. A Republican candidate for the Maine House of Representatives felt it was necessary to tweet about some of the Parkland High survivors and basically shit-talk them. So just like an individual who's really empathetic and mature and classy. He referred to one of the students as a bald-faced liar and then proceeded to insult Emma Gonzalez, who you probably know because she's been one of the most outspoken and visible students in the wake of the shooting. He said, and I quote, "There is nothing about this skinhead lesbian that impresses me, and there is nothing to say unless you're a frothing at the mouth moonbat." This dude's name is Leslie Gibson, and he's currently running unopposed, so if anyone wants to step up as the Democratic candidate to run against him, that would be great. Please do this. Gonna pause for 1 second so I can thank the sponsor of this video, Amino Apps, who helped ensure that I can continue making content. Amino is an awesome mobile app featuring a vast array of diverse communities for pretty much every interest or identity you can think of. However, one of the communities that I found and like the best is Feminism AF. That means feminism as fuck. It has a ton of really thought-provoking chat rooms, cute feminist artwork, interesting polls, and a wealth of news and information. Feminism AF is a locked community in order to create a safe environment for other members and to keep out those damn trolls. There are a ton of ways you can connect with people on Amino, like texting, voice chat, and avatar chat. It's a great place to talk about your interests, share stories, and receive support from other people like you. So definitely go check out Amino and use the link in the description so you can join the community right away without having to wait. Anyway, moving on, and now my cat is also here for your viewing pleasure. And my annoyance. Hi, get off. No, why are you this way? This week, National Geographic published their April issue, also known as the Race Issue, and apologized for decades of racist reporting. National Geographic decided to look inward on their history of reporting in a letter from the editor entitled, "For decades, our coverage was racist. To rise above our past, we must acknowledge it." In order to do so, the editor-in-chief, Susan Goldberg, reached out to a professor of African history and the history of photography at the University of Virginia, whose name is John Edwin Mason. She asked him to look into their 130-year archive of past publications and report back on what he found. And guess what his findings were? You got it, there was racism. According to Professor Mason's findings, until the 1970s, National Geographic all but ignored people of color who lived in the United States, rarely acknowledging them beyond laborers or domestic workers. Meanwhile, it pictures natives elsewhere as exotics, famously and frequently unclothed, happy hunters, noble savages, every type of cliche. According to Mason, in an interview with NPR, the photography, like the articles, didn't simply emphasize difference, but made difference. Very exotic, very strange, and puts difference into a hierarchy. And that hierarchy was very clear, that the West, and especially English-speaking world, was at the top of the hierarchy, and Black and brown people were somewhere underneath. One of the most common themes and tropes that he found looking at the photography from National Geographic over the years were images of Native people looking at white Western technology in fascination and awe. So basically, throughout their entire run, National Geographic has painted this very specific imagery of savage Native people kind of looking up to these civilized white colonizers, while also simultaneously ignoring the entire history of European colonization of African and indigenous lands. So, you know, just like the usual. They even found a 1916 photo featuring two Aboriginal people with the caption, "These savages rank lowest in intelligence of all human beings." Yikes, Saruni Dooney. Mason goes on to explain that National Geographic had an explicit editorial policy to show nothing unpleasant. So basically they were showing readers this highly exoticized imagery of people of color in foreign lands, perpetuating the specific stereotype of them being uncivilized, while also refusing to show all of the bad things that were happening, such as war and famine and slavery, and the list continues. Some of which was definitely due to Western colonization and was our fault. According to Mason, Americans got ideas about the world from Tarzan movies and crude racist caricatures. Segregation was the way it was. National Geographic wasn't teaching as much as reinforcing messages they already received, and doing so in a magazine that had tremendous authority. National Geographic comes into existence at the height of colonialism, and the world was divided into the colonizers and the colonized. That was the color line, and National Geographic was reflecting that view of the world. Honestly, I think it's really important and significant that they chose to own up to this and report on this during the race issue, which was long overdue, because I find that media often doesn't take responsibility for reflecting oppressive social norms instead of subverting them. I really like what Goldberg says in her letter from the editor. National Geographic should not do an issue on race without understanding its own complicity in shaping understandings of race and racial hierarchy. It's hard for an individual or a country to evolve past discomfort if the source of the anxiety is only discussed in hushed tones. Let's confront today's shameful use of racism as a political strategy and prove we are better than this. So like most of America, I saw Black Panther and I loved it. I thought it was fucking incredible. It had a super talented cast, a great narrative, and one of the most compelling villains that I think the Marvel Cinematic Universe has ever had. However, apparently Chinese audiences were super uncomfortable with it. If you aren't aware, Chinese audiences are massive consumers of a lot of American action movies. Sometimes action films that don't perform well in the United States will end up making a ton of money in China because they fucking love them, I guess. However, there has been a documented trend of Chinese film reviewers leaving pretty racist reviews. One of the reviews says, "Maybe Chinese people are still not used to a film full of black people." The reviewer said he had to pinch himself more than 10 times to stay awake during the movie because Black Panther is black, all the major characters are black, a lot of scenes are black, the car chasing scene is black, the blackness has really made me drowsy. Another reviewer said, quote, "The film is filled with black actors and actresses. Also, because the film's colors are dark, it's nearly a torture for the eyes to watch." Maybe it's because of the lack of racial diversity in China, but it's odd and concerning that so many of Chinese audiences are having difficulty relating to black actors and black characters. Unfortunately, colorism and anti-blackness run rampant in many Asian communities. I'm not Chinese, but I have witnessed it in many other Asian communities. Asian American communities as well. So this isn't just like a China problem. This is also a problem in America. Obviously, not just Asian communities are racist, but it's definitely a thing that I have observed in my own communities and have read other Asian writers like talk about this as well. So do better. Please, everyone, do better. I might regret covering this, but one of the news stories I read this week was about a student who was kicked out of a university class for arguing that there are only two genders. And I can already hear the free speech arguments. I hear them, I know them, I anticipate them. Anyway, thank you for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, please give it a like and subscribe to this channel for more videos like this one. Also, don't forget to ring the notification bell because YouTube doesn't make sense sometimes. If you would like to help support this channel and Feminist Fridays, then please consider donating to my Patreon page, which will be linked below.